All right, good morning, everybody. I want to welcome you to this tax Amazon preparation meeting for the City Council Budget Committee, which is about to discuss how to allocate the Amazon tax funds. And I think, before we get into some of the nitty gritty, we've got some exciting updates that we're going to hear. I want to just first thank everybody on behalf of Councilmember Shama Sawant and our office here. We should just take a step back and consider the fact that what we're doing today, what the City Council is doing, is discussing how to allocate the $240 million that our movement, that ordinary people, working people, communities of color, faith leaders, as we'll hear from in droves today, that we fought for and that we won. And it was over and above the opposition of the establishment, of Amazon, of big business. And let's not forget, we started this year with zero and a Mayor Jenny Durkin, saying literally, quote, it was never going to happen, that it was irresponsible to even talk about taxing big business, especially in the context of COVID-19. And they wanted to make working people pay the cost of this crisis and the cost of the affordable housing mess. But working people stood up, fought back, and today we're discussing, the City Council is discussing, and we're going to weigh in on how to allocate the $240 million that we won for affordable housing. Before we get into some of the details, as we always do, let's go ahead and hear from Nick Jones, a community organizer in Shama Sawant's office. We're here to sign up for public comment, to pressure the City Council. So let's hear from Nick real quickly, how you can sign up. If you haven't already, please sign up. It matters how many people sign up to weigh in to demand that City Council allocate the funds from our Amazon tax where it should. So Nick, go ahead and show people how to sign up real quickly.
Thanks, Adam. Yeah, and just like Adam said, even if you're not able to speak, it's completely worth signing up just to put the maximum pressure on the City Council as they're discussing these funds. And to be able to sign up, you're going to want to get to this webpage, and it's quite easy to do so. Hopefully folks have done it before, but generally, if you just type in Seattle public comment, should bring you right here. There should be a link right at the top, the seattle.gov URL. Just click that. If it load real quick, all right, and then you'll should be able to get there. Kind of handy infographic to tell you everything. You're going to want to go down and fill out this form in its entirety, and this will be the way that you sign up. Importantly, you want to make sure to include your email address and phone number. The email address you enter as well, the city clerk will send the link that you will use to get onto the call they're using during the council meeting, where you'll be able to give your public testimony, and they'll use whatever number you list to recognize you when they're calling off the stack. So make sure you include, whatever email and phone number you actually use. You can check these off, and then for here, you can kind of put in anything, like 1,000 homes in the CD, something like that, and then just hit submit. Wait for your confirmation email, and it should have instructions in the email about where to go from there. Yeah, so definitely, if you haven't signed up, please take a moment to just do that right now. We really need as many people to sign up as possible. So just while we kind of go to the rest of the speakers, take a moment to get on public comment, and I will put it back to Adam. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Nick. And as we've been saying, it really does matter. This, in the time of COVID here, normally we would have rallies at City Hall. We'd be able to pack chambers, council chambers, and directly pressure City Council. We're having to take these measures of, calling in and giving this verbal over the phone public comment. But in reality, given that our movement has taken such great pains over and over to give comment like this, it really does have an impact on City Council, and they know how focused we are and how effectively we are able to pressure them with our movement demands. Speaking of, the need to bring the movement into City Hall, one of the values of these community watch parties that we have before each public comment opportunity is to update the movement on the latest developments So we're going to listen to, we're going to go to Jonathan Rosenblum. Soon we'll go to Councilmember Shama Sawant, who will give us, the normal political updating. Later on, we'll go to Reverend Ying, who's been a stalwart of this movement in building, especially among faith leaders. But before that, let's hear some of the updates from Jonathan Rosenblum in our office, to update our movement, to arm us, to prepare us to give public comment. Jonathan, are you in a position to take it from here?
Yes, I can. And good morning to everybody. Today is just another important day for our movement as we fight for power in City Hall. A little bit of the context of where we're at. We won, as Adam said, this historic Amazon tax just a couple of weeks ago, something the political establishment absolutely did not want to do and has fought us tooth and nail for the last 3 years. And we made that historic breakthrough. And today, what's before the council is the legislation that determines how that money is going to get allocated. And again, the establishment did not want to do what we've been proposing to do. They'd rather spend the money in other areas. And we said, we've got to fund housing. We've got to fund the Green New Deal, right? We've got to fight racist gentrification and so on. And the legislation that's coming before us has some money for the Green New Deal, and it also has money for housing. And I want to describe that a little bit more and talk a little bit more about where the housing fight is at. Of the $214 million, and that's really sort of a minimum $214 million that the tax is going to bring in, about $133 million under the resolution that's going before the council today. About $133 million is going to be dedicated toward housing and services for low-income working people. And that is a tremendous victory, and that's really the movement's victory that we are getting that in the legislation. We have, working with the broader community, the Justice for George Floyd movement, and especially with clergy and other faith leaders and activists over the last couple of months, also been fighting to make sure that a portion of that $133 million is reserved for building affordable housing in the Central District to reverse the racist gentrification that the city has been complicit in over the last several decades. And our demands that we brought forward from the community is that $50 million be dedicated toward affordable housing in the Central District. And this is a very ambitious demand that we set up, but we said 50 million because that will allow us over the next several years to build 1,000 homes in the CD to help bring back African-American households to the communities that they have been economically evicted from because of racism and gentrification. Many of you are aware that that Shama held a press conference outside of New Hope Baptist Church back in mid-June, where she and the clergy unveiled the demand for $50 million a year for affordable housing in the Central District. And from there, a number of faith activists led the campaign to get hundreds of people, more than 230 people, ultimately faith leaders, clergy, and also lay activists, on an open letter to City Council demanding that City Council reserve $50 million a year to build affordable housing in the Central District. And just in the last few days, there's been an outpouring of support around that demand. We've seen a very powerful letter from Michael Ramos at the Church Council that we'll perhaps read a part of later in this session, that demands that the City Council support the community's call for $50 million a year for affordable housing in the Central District specifically. We've had a number of other clergy who've also written some very compelling letters to City Council. We've got a number of clergy who are signed up to speak during public comment this morning. And we have an op-ed that was published by Reverend Angela Ying and Reverend Willis in the South Seattle Emerald just yesterday, describing how the city has been complicit in gentrifying the Central District over the years, and why it's the city's obligation to put money back into the community to reverse racist gentrification and give people an opportunity to come back and live in the Central District. So that's been our demand. And as you know, anytime that our movement makes a demand, there's a reaction from the other side, from the political establishment, because our number was 50, their number was 0. They wanted to dedicate no money to the Central District for affordable housing. They just wanted to say this money's available and, you know, go get it, compete with other groups for it. And there has been a lot of sort of back and forth among the establishment in the last few days as they felt this escalating pressure from the community. And this morning, Councilmember Mosqueda, who chairs the Budget Committee, called Shama and said, I'm not going to agree to your 50 million, but I will agree to an amendment that dedicates $17 million toward affordable housing in the Central District. And I have to say, that's not a limit. That's the floor for how much money we can dedicate in the Central District housing year on, every year from now on, if this passes. Now, I do want to say that anything that we win in the political arena, of course, whether it's the Amazon tax or this funding, is a function of the balance of forces that we have as a movement against the political establishment. And just like with the Amazon tax, we don't win everything that we demand. What we win represents a historic breakthrough. And this will be the first time, assuming this amendment goes forward and passes, this will be the first time that the city is committed to dedicate housing money year after year after year to rebuild the Central District and to de-gentrify the Central District. So people need to understand that historical context. Now, there's one other thing I just want to mention, since we are talking about the balance of forces. We would be in a somewhat different situation, a very different situation, if we had other council members rallying around our demand for $50 million for Central District housing. This is not a secret, our demand. Our demand has been out there since we announced it with the clergy back on June 18th. At no point did any other council office come to us and say, hey, we want to support this. We reached out to a number of them and they all said, well, we're thinking about it. We're considering. Even, I have to say, even as recently as last night, Councilmember Tammy Morales, who considers herself a progressive, was saying she was undecided on our proposal on the community's demand to fund $50 million a year in Central District housing. Now, imagine how things would be different if we had somebody else like Councilmember Morales advocating alongside us. We would probably be in a much stronger position to win more money, but we didn't have her, and she never committed to the community's demand, and that's unfortunate. And yet we are still going to move forward today, and assuming we can win this, claim a historic victory just as we did with the Amazon tax. I will stop here and let Councilmember Sawant speak, or Adam, and I can stay on briefly to take any quick questions or if I need to amplify on anything I said, and then I will be dropping off to prepare for the Budget Committee.
All right. Thank you so much, Jonathan. Yeah, for getting into some of those details. And of course, the most important detail is that contrast between 0, what the establishment was willing and prepared to give at the beginning of this year, and at minimum $214 to $240 million of money for housing and basic needs for working people by taxing big business. And that's a movement that's a victory that our movement won and nobody else. And of course, it stands in stark contrast to the free market, which has just been allowed to run roughshod over working people. We've seen rents just skyrocketing, housing costs, for working class homeowners just going, and property taxes going through the roof. We've seen the construction, Seattle's been the construction capital of the whole country now for several years running, but it's all luxury being built. And at the same time, we've seen 12,000 homeless people on our streets. So this is a direct response from our movement to say, we're now going to allocate, and it sounds like out of this, $130+ million for social housing. That's a socialist response to the free market failure, which has failed to provide basic housing at an affordable price for working people, not just the poorest, but the nurses, the baristas, the construction workers who have also, been kicked out of this city. And of course, it's nowhere worse than in the historically Black neighborhoods in Seattle, where gentrification has just ravaged both the homeowner community, but then of course, renters have been systematically kicked out so that developers, corporate management companies, and landlords can make billions of dollars. So thank you, Jonathan, for providing some of those details. Let's go now to Councilmember Shama Sawant, who can further provide us with some political context and some updates to help us prepare as in just about 40 minutes time, people will be, the city council meeting will be beginning and people will be preparing to give public comment. So Councilmember Shama Sawant, are you ready to help us help orient this preparation?
Yes, good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here, and thanks to Adam and Jonathan for helping lay out the political questions that we are addressing today. And I think the highlight, absolute highlight of everything we're going to be doing today is, as both of them laid out, that we, and the basis of everything today's discussions on the city council wouldn't even exist had we not won this historic Amazon tax victory that we won last week, Monday of last week, when we forced the majority of the council to vote, veto-proof majority of the council to vote yes on the Amazon tax, taxing big business for the first time in the city of Seattle, with the nation's most regressive tax system, to begin to address the needs of our society. And I think the other highlight of this, of course, has to be that is not going to be enough. $214 million only is the beginning, and we have to keep fighting. But the lessons of the victory are also important. We won only because we had a powerful movement. It was democratically organized in the grassroots with a democratically accountable coordinating committee that was elected by the Action Conference, and that we had 4 Action Conferences attended by thousands now at this point, where we discussed, debated on, and then voted on key decisions for our movement. This is almost unheard of. So if there's one thing that we can spread around the nation when we talk to family, friends, co-workers, activists that we are in touch with in other cities, please make sure that you share that the reason we won was because it was a powerful movement and because it was democratically organized, where the leadership of the movement was accountable to the rank and file of the movement, and not just self-appointed leaders who say they're doing the right thing, but then end up making deals with the establishment. I think that's very important. And our victory is also a testament to the clarity in working class people's minds, how important this was, because it was because of that clarity that we were able to win 20,000 signatures to the ballot initiative petition, the Tax Amazon ballot initiative petition, in the first 20 days of the Justice for George Floyd movement, where Black and brown working people and working people of all races and all ethnicities understand that working people have to stand together against racism, against gentrification, to fight for affordable housing, and to make sure that we begin to wage a real war that we can win against big business domination in the city, because it hasn't worked for us. In fact, it has decimated our communities. But keeping in mind that today, the discussion and the votes are going to be on allocating the funds that we won because of our movement last Monday through the Amazon tax victory. And the reason we won also was because the movement, as I said, was composed of thousands of people led by socialist alternative, progressive labor unions, and other progressive organizations, and also by, as Adam correctly said, stalwart faith leaders like Reverends Angela Yang and Robert Jeffrey. Really shows the tremendous breadth of our movement, that people are coming from all walks of life in the working class and saying we need to stand together to win a different kind of city. And I think we have to also emphasize, and this is the basis for the anger in our society. Part of that anger has been captured by the uprising against police murders of Black and brown people, which is that capitalism as a system, and that's the system we are in today, is a system set up to deprive the majority of humanity and the planet's sustainability, so a few can get the vast majority of the wealth, and the rest of us are, as I said, deeply deprived. And so it's not a coincidence, but it's the way the capitalist system works, that the military is used, for example, internationally to subjugate people in neo-colonial countries. In countries like the US, we have, which carries out international imperialism, we have the police to repress social movements right here in our country. And also that the system itself, the capitalist system itself, has engendered and made systematic racism, sexism, sexual violence, violence against LGBTQ people, and all kinds of tiers and divisions in our society among working people, so that we remain divided, and that the levels of oppression are organized in such a way that we cannot bring about unity. And that's why it's important that we push back against that. And it's really crucial that so many leaders of color have clarified around the country that slavery itself was very much instituted to enable the early mercantilist profiteers to profit off the backs of ordinary people at that time. And it's also crucial that we are following in the footsteps of leaders like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who towards the end of his life, and this is why he became a threat to the establishment and the ruling class under capitalism, because he was concluding that workers of all races need to unite, because capitalism is a system that requires racism. And in order to break that stranglehold, we have to fight together and win victories against this racist and oppressive and violent system. And capitalism itself, I would say as a socialist, capitalism itself is a police state. It is a police state. It is set up, it's not coincidental, but it is set up to repress communities of color. We've seen this locally through the Weed and Seed program that Reverend Robert Jeffrey, Reverend Ying, and many others who have been here for years and have fought those battles know what I'm talking about, how poor people and homeless people are repressed by this police state, by an economic system that is never actually going to work for them. And I think, we have to start spreading that message as well, because it is not going to be it is not going to be enough to fight for reforms. As we have seen, even to win this modest tax, we had to go all out and fight for this. And as Jonathan said, no council member other than our office was willing to support the fight for that extra $550 million that we brought an amendment for. And not a single council member even gave us a second for that motion so that it could get voted on. Even if it got voted down, there was no vote on the $50 million that we said should be added to the Amazon tax, because these wealthiest corporations are absolutely capable of paying a small tax so that our Black working class community members can come back to the central district and be able to live in this city as is their right in permanently affordable housing. But we saw how that went. Not a single council member, despite all the rhetoric and the grandiose speeches that Black Lives Matter, not one single council member stood with us. It is important to draw the lesson that what we win is not based on the truth that's on our side. Absolutely, we have truth on our side. We should take pride in being righteous fighters for social justice, but at the same time recognize that what we win is not because we are being truthful. What we win is based on a question of power. When we have a balance of forces that favors the needs of ordinary working people, then we win. If we don't have that balance of forces, then we don't win. And the establishment and the ruling class and the Chamber of Commerce and Amazon and Jeff Bezos and the billionaires, they get to keep the status quo. So if we want to win against the status quo, it is not going to be enough to win these reforms. What is important for us is to understand what it meant, how we won our victory, and to build on the historic victory that we have just won to win more. And before I go on, I also wanted to say, this is July. Look at what our movement has accomplished. Last year, when big business and Jeff Bezos thought they had it in the bag, they were going to make a corporate takeover of City Hall, and they thought it was all going their way, working people, ordinary people, people of all races stood with us, and we fought back, and we were able to win an enormous historic victory in the re-election campaign last year. And then we didn't stand still. We didn't say, okay, we won this victory, this is great, we're going to rest on our laurels. No, we immediately used that re-election victory to begin building the struggles of this year. And as soon as we came back after the holidays in January, we won the landmark the landmark legislation to allow tiny house villages to be situated throughout the city. We had enormous opposition from the establishment to win that, but we were able to win. We also won the historic winter evictions moratorium, which actually laid the ground for the eviction moratorium that we have protecting people now. And in fact, that's not going to last forever. So we have to start building our renters' rights movements as well very soon now. But the point is that as soon as January came, we were able to win 2 key victories around housing and homelessness issues. And we know that disproportionately affects the lack of affordable housing, and the homelessness crisis disproportionately affects marginalized communities. And it was a very important victory that was fought for by people on the ground, by organizations that represent our homeless neighbors. And we were able to then build on that to launch the Tax Amazon struggle, which now, in the middle of this year, in the middle of the pandemic, has resulted in this crucial victory. But it's important to be clear, on the other hand, that what all of this shows also, and that what we have to be crystal clear about, is that this establishment kind of approach to politics is not working for us. It is not enough to have one council member like myself. We need more elected representatives who use the approach we use, which is being rooted in the movement and being accountable to the movement, as opposed to making deals in the back room and selling out. And so what we have to do today is to claim the victory for the Amazon tax yet again, because it cannot be said enough. We won this through the movement. We have to claim victory. If we win the $17 million, which, as Jonathan said, as opposed to 0, we will be winning $17 million today if we are willing to fight for it. And public comment has to be very clear. 17 million is not enough. Shame on the city council members who didn't support the $50 million amendment that we brought forward last week. But at the same time, we have to be crystal clear. This will not be enough. We need a new party for working people altogether, because the Democratic establishment is not working for us. What we do win from the Democratic establishment ends up being a consequence of the pressure of our movement, forcing them to make some concessions. But that's not a model that's working for us. We need fighters in City Hall. We need fighters in the state legislature, and we need fighters in US Congress, people who will fight for us and stand with us and not attempt to build friendship up there in the establishment. And similarly, while these reforms are important, the lessons are even more important. So let's make sure we share these lessons with everybody, and that we cannot hope to end racism or the housing crisis even on the basis of capitalism. Capitalism will never create affordable housing for all. We need to fight for a socialist world, a different kind of society altogether. So in public comment, please make sure to claim victory for our movement proudly and unapologetically. Call out the council members who have not stood with us, and help people understand that really what we need is a different kind of politics, and not council members who will come to claim the glory when they feel pressure from the movement. And last but not least, when you're speaking in public comment, remember that you are not just addressing the council. Yes, you are, and you're demanding them to be held accountable. But when you speak in public comment, that minute or 2 minutes that you'll have today, and I believe it will be a minute, it is a short amount of time, but it is a precious minute where you also get to address other people in the movement, people who are listening, who may not be confident enough to fight in the movement actively, but are listening carefully. You are also speaking to them. So make sure that you claim the victory for the movement, and you share the lessons of how we won and how we win in general, and the need for a fighting kind of politics, because people are watching us and people are being inspired. So let's not lose this opportunity to politically educate everyone together in our movement, so that we win what we can today, and then we come back in September and wage an additional battle for the budget for next year.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Shama, for that really valuable political context. And we need to be crystal clear on the message that we need to bring to the city council. And it is just important to remember that, this is that all of these are Democratic politicians that we're having to wage these epic battles to wrest money, from big business so that we can put it to housing, from developers and corporate management and landlord companies so we can put it to ordinary people, to working people. And it's been the strength of our movement, which is determined if we win or lose. And furthermore, it's on the strength of this Black Lives Matter uprising, a literal uprising throughout the country, which allowed for our tax Amazon movement to go directly to the Black working class more than at any time before. And it was 20,000 signatures that we got over 20 days, which allowed us to submit, 30,000 signatures and really put the screws to the establishment, making it clear that if they don't pass a significant Amazon tax, then we will take it to the ballot and we will win. We've seen the power of the faith community several times over the course of this struggle, and Reverends Angela Ying and Reverend Robert Jeffrey have been pivotal parts in this. We've also just worth recognizing that these press conferences in this movement building is not just limited. We've had Reverend Lawrence Willis from True Vine of Holiness Baptist Church, Reverend Willie Seals from the Christ Spirit Church, Reverend Carrie Anderson from First African Methodist Episcopal Church. We've had reverends from all over, and I believe we're about to hear from a lot of them in public comment. But let's go ahead and right now we've got Reverend Angela Ying is on the phone call, and maybe Reverend Ying, you can kind of talk about the breadth and the power of this movement, calling for 1,000 homes in the CD to win this Amazon tax. And right now it appears we're on the verge of going from $0 in the CD to our demand for 50 million. We might not be strong enough to win that full demand, but 17 million potentially that we could win if we keep fighting today. Could you talk about how we won that and the impact that could have, among other things? Reverend Ying, if you're able to take it from here.
Thanks, Adam. Good morning, everyone. Solidarity. It's always great to see everyone. You're such an inspiration. Can't even begin to thank each and every one of you. Just wanted to continue to share with you that, yes, over 220 faith leaders and clergy, including Reverend Robert Jeffrey and myself, are not only going to be on the call for public comment, and we're glad that you're going to be joining with us to continue to demand that we have that we get 1,000 affordable homes in the Central District for our Black families, given the continued racism and the gentrification and displacement that's been happening on for decades. As many of you know, since 1960s, when 80% of that neighborhood in the CD was Black, now it's only less than 18%. So part of it is working together in solidarity. We couldn't do it without you. Again, as Jonathan has shared, a lot of us are working together. So I'm just grateful to be part of the movement as a faith leader. You inspire me. You continue to keep me going. You keep my people going. And I'm just really grateful because you are my people. I know Reverend Jeffrey's going to say more, but Councilmember Shamas, I want to just give you thanks, and also Jonathan and Adam and everyone on the staff of Nick and Sasha and others and Ted on the staff of Councilmember Sawan, who have worked tirelessly. I was actually emailing and talking to Morales, Councilmember Morales, hoping that she would support us, but anything that we can get with continue to fight is really important because just wanted to let you know that's going to be happening. So during this public comment, we will be sharing that we want and urge everyone to stand for the 1,000 affordable homes in the Central District for Black families in the CD, and hoping that you'll join me with that. Now, wanted to end with something that when I got discouraged, because part of the time it's like, whether it was rain or shine, fighting for tax Amazon, whether it was, we weren't sure what was happening as the protests were going on, and yet, as Adam said, 20,000 signatures in 20 days, we realized it really is the movement. It is the people. And I'm just so grateful for you. So a really close friend of mine, and I want to share this with you, it reminds me to keep on keeping on. And he shares these important words. When nothing seems to help, I go and look at a stonecutter, hammering away at his rock perhaps 100 times. And I know you could relate. Without as much as a crack showing it. Yet at the 101st blow, it was split in two. And I know it was not the blow that did it, but all that has gone before. So trust what you have done, continue to do what you're doing. And I'm just so thankful because we will continue to fight. And when we fight, we win. Let's do it.
All right, thank you, Reverend Ying, as always, for the inspirational and also just really substantive words that reflect, how hard you and those around you, I know, in your church and your community of work to win. What is $240 million from the biggest, most powerful corporations in this city and in fact world for direct use for working people. Again, it's important to take that step back and remember that today the vote is to allocate the money that we won on the strength of our movement. And again, Reverend Robert Jeffrey, if you've participated in these community watch preparation parties, have already heard from him and know that he's played an important and pivotal role in this struggle. Let's go ahead and hear from him again. And it's appropriate, obviously, given just the decades-long influence and impact that he's had in the Central District as our movement turns its attention to fighting the gentrification through this Amazon tax and demanding that we allocate $50 million to build 1,000 homes in the Central District. Reverend Jeffrey, can you talk a little bit about that struggle more?
First of all, I want to thank Councilwoman Sawant and her staff, and I want to thank all of the people who are involved. Angela Yang, who has worked so hard to mobilize the clergy and to keep that mobilization, make that mobilization real. I want to thank everybody because I think that this is a movement that must continue. And I just believe right now we have momentum. I believe right now that we have to gather others who are maybe dormant right now and who may not understand what is happening, but who want to see change. We have to gather them. But I think all told, I think that we are in a good position, and I'm just delighted to be a part of this struggle. Just a part of what's going on. I think that we just have to keep up the hard work. You guys are the hardest working organizers that I've ever had the privilege of working with. I think it just has some excellent opportunities here in Seattle. I think the pushback is going to be strong, but I think that we are more than able and capable to deal with that. I think that the faith community is involved. And I think that that's a real plus. And so I'm just delighted to be a part, and I'm going to play my part until I can't. So, hey, let's just do it.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Reverend Jeffrey. And we've got about 19 minutes until we give public comment. I think it is notable, how much, whether it's Shama or Jonathan, and of course, Reverends Ying and Jeffrey, just talking about the persistence and the tirelessness of this movement. And in reality, Councilmember Sawant, it's the movement inside City Hall that's reflected there, just in terms of the work ethic of the office. And it's just worth taking a little stroll down memory lane when we talk about the fact that the Democratic politicians in the City Council did nothing, have done nothing to help this funding for the Central District, make its way, that it's been on the force of the movement. Well, that's been the case for the whole tax Amazon, struggle the entire time. It was 2 years ago when, after already a long struggle, our movement won a $40 million tax on big business to build social housing. And then it was abruptly, just taken from the movement a few weeks later when the council shamefully, succumbed to the bullying of Jeff Bezos and big business and repealed that tax. And obviously our movement, and many in the movement, wanted to say, well, we messed up by poking the bear. We shouldn't have gone after Amazon. They're too powerful. Let's focus now on other stuff, on regional stuff, on things that are more to the scale of what our movement can win. And thankfully, as we see now, a section of the movement, Socialist Alternative, of course, had a huge role to play, as did Councilmember Shama Sawant in our office, but also faith leaders like Reverend Ying and Reverend Jeffrey, progressive unions who stood with the Amazon tax movement like UAW 4121 and WFC 1488. grassroots organizations like 350 Seattle, like Nicholsville, Share Wheel, who stood with the movement and kept building so that 2 years later, and again, after all kinds of efforts by the establishment to not pass a tax on big business, to not tax a $1 trillion corporation, to not tax an individual who, if I'm reading correctly, has made $150 billion, Jeff Bezos, since the pandemic began. It took a movement, a mass movement, that overcame numerous obstacles, from Amazon's effort to buy city council last year, to the effort earlier this year to ban our tax Amazon movement with the idea, the allure that a county tax would be passed. Efforts to take the movement outside of the driver's seat by putting the big business tax in a different committee, not chaired by Councilmember Sawant, but rather by Mosqueda. And we saw ultimately what the effort was to do, which was to sideline it, to not hear discussions. And in reality, our movement only was able to overcome it when the George Floyd protest uprising, it exploded. And once again, the tax Amazon movement, with the political leadership, of Socialist Alternative, of Shama Sawant, and the grassroots activists in the Action Conference, was able to orient to this mass movement, get the tens of thousands of signatures needed so that we were in a position to pressure the council. And as a result of this tireless work, we now have $240 million of big business tax won by our movement. And today we're going to be fighting to put 50 million of that, 1,000 homes in the CD. And we've heard from Reverend Ying, we've heard from Reverend Jeffrey. Let's go ahead right now and hear from an organizer in Shama's office, Sasha Somer, who's got a lot of experience with people, given the most effective public comment possible. So let's hear if Sasha's ready to kind of give us some instructions for a few minutes about how can we most effectively, speak to council. And I agree, it's also important that Shama noted that we're speaking to council, of course, but in reality, we're mainly speaking to our movement about how we can pressure city council. So Sasha, if you're in a position to take it from here and explain how we can effectively do it, please do.
Hi, yes, I can do that. Thank you. Everyone, thanks for joining us. As people have said, we need as many people as possible calling into public comment this morning to demand the 1,000 new affordable homes for the Central District to reverse the racist gentrification. We've heard that already 292 people have signed up for public comment, which is great. Having hundreds of people sign up to speak really starts to put that pressure on public comment. And even if there isn't enough time in the public comment period for everyone to speak, just knowing that hundreds of people are here watching the meeting, signing up to speak, engaged, puts that pressure on the council. So if you haven't signed up yet, it's still worth signing up with that in mind. Let's use our time as effectively as possible when we're speaking. So first of all, you're likely only to have 1 minute to speak. So you want to prepare what you're going to say beforehand. So you can get your full thought out in under 1 minute. I like to actually count the number of words in what I'm going to say. The average speaking speed is about 130 words per minute. That'll give you a good sense of what you're able to say. If you're a member of an organization, a union, etc., add that to your introduction so we can show the broad range of people and communities in this movement. And identify yourself as part of the Tax Amazon movement. As other folks said, we won this because hundreds of people got involved and fought for months and months and months for this. And let's make sure the council knows that we're still here and fighting it out till the end. Including a thank you to Councilmember Sawant for putting forward this legislation, as our voice in City Hall shows the rest of the council that we have her back in this fight. She's not alone, but she's putting this forward. She's putting forward the community's demand, and thanking the over 200 faith community leaders who are standing up for this, which underscores that broad support that we have. If you have a personal story of the impact of the racist gentrification in this city, definitely include that, briefly. It really brings, the personal, the real impacts that this has on people in our city, Or if you don't, just in your own words, why you support the demand. Of course, you only have 1 minute. It's better to get through one whole thought to the conclusion of your comment than try to talk too fast and cover too much and get cut off before you finish your thought. Yeah, we fought long and hard for this Amazon tax. This is hundreds of millions of dollars that we can address the deep housing crisis in our city, the racist gentrification. Let's make sure this money goes to where it's needed the most. So yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Sasha. And obviously for a lot of folks, this is something that, now over the course of the last months and in reality, well, especially months since the COVID-19 crisis, we've become accustomed to signing up and giving comment. But it's also important to remember that, yeah, our movement is constantly growing. We're constantly looking for ways to get more people on board. So for a lot of people, this is the first time they've ever had the strange experience of calling into city council to advocate directly. And as we know, these processes are set up, they're tailor-made to not include working people, occurring at strange times right during the working day when most of the time people can't participate. And obviously with a lot of hurdles and hoops to go through, whether it's, having to go to city council or in this COVID-19 context to go through this strange process of signing up 2 hours before and then getting a call from City Hall. So as part of our movement, just educating our movement for how to participate in this pressuring of City Council is an important aspect of this struggle. We're gonna, go back to the focus on today's prep meeting in a few minutes, but I did want to take just a little bit of time to emphasize the fact that, as we've noted, this is a struggle to allocate, the money that we've already won by taxing big business. We have gotten word that there are a lot of people that have signed up for public comment. So people might need to be patient as they're waiting to be included and called to give that public comment sign up, but it does have an impact. And so please be patient when doing that. But I wanted to take a few minutes to talk about the fact that we are directly shifting after this tax Amazon struggle to the budget, where we have, again, because of the explosion of the George Floyd protests and the national resonance, and especially locally, of this really powerful demand to defund the Seattle Police Department by at least 50%. That would be $200 million of the full year's budget and more than $80 million of the year that's, the amount that's remaining. And we need to build a mass movement to force that actual money to be transferred. A lot of people watching, I'm sure, have seen that 7 of 9 city council members have publicly pledged to support defunding the police by at least 50%. Now, that's a very exciting development. And of course, we've got the council members on record, but now in the tax Amazon movement, probably nobody knows better than we do how much those words actually mean unless there's a movement to force those words to become reality. We've seen an Amazon text passed, not just words, but an actual vote taken, only to have it repealed just moments later when big business, wielded its head and bullied the council. So we know that when we're talking about something as basic, Shama talked about the police state that's needed in order to uphold the insane inequality that we experience, the insane racism that Black people and communities of color, Latino people, urban Native people experience on a daily basis. The Seattle Police Department is the armed apparatus that allows that inequality to maintain. So they will be loath to transfer $200 million per year from that into the community needs that are so desperately needed. And we know, of course, the demand for 1,000 homes in the Central District. It needs money in order to be funded. We're about to win several $1 million for that funding right now, but the People's Budget movement is a space where we can also wage an epic battle for massive amounts of funding from big business, from, in this case, the police apparatus, to defend the interests of big business and putting it to the needs of working people in the form of housing, of restorative justice programs, of basic community education programs, and other things that we know the community has been demanding for a long time. In the next few weeks, the extraordinary budget session that's been created by the COVID-19 economic crisis we'll be discussing, we'll be meeting, we'll be voting on how to defund, if at all, the police and where to put that money. So the People's Budget Movement is one space where the movement, having a council position through Shama Sawan, can actively fight on those. And as we've noted from the very beginning when this special budget process was called, we are in a position to put forward the concrete amendments that can actually defund the police. But we, of course, need the movement and community behind that in order to actually win anything behind that. Also, for the People's Budget, we've got an epic problem, as folks, of course, know, with homelessness. We want to fight to stop the sweeps. Every year, the city wastes millions of dollars sweeping homeless people from one corner to the next. It's especially dangerous in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic. We need to stop that and put those millions of dollars to housing, to basic needs. We also need, as Shama was noting, we passed legislation early on this year to make it possible to have 40 additional tiny house villages. In this budget process, we're fighting for an additional funding for 10 tiny house villages, and we can win that. But again, only if we've got a movement of ordinary people behind it. And we've had a People's Budget town hall already where folks from Nicholsville announced their commitment to fight for this, where folks from the Low Income Housing Institute also announced their willingness to fight for this. And so rallying around this demand, we've got a shot, but only, like with the Amazon tax, only if we have the movement around it to win it. The same goes for important renters' rights demands, like funding for eviction defense attorneys, which we've fought now for the last 2 years. We managed to win funding for a measly, it's an important victory, but it's 2 attorneys, which costs the city a piddly $200,000. We need in this budget cycle to win funding for the full amount so that every renter has access to an attorney, and especially necessary as we face a wave of evictions resulting from the layoffs, the mass loss in pay from the COVID-19 crisis. I think that my understanding is we're in a position right now to show an exciting video from the movement around this demand to fund housing in the Central District. If that's in fact accurate, I'll pass it over to Ted or Nick from our office to try and do that. If it's not possible because it's technically challenging, then we can continue and move on to our finalized prep for this city council meeting. Ted or Nick, are we in a position to try that video? Am I understanding correctly? It looks like we are. Let's go ahead, and if folks can bear with me just for one moment, as I believe Ted is attempting to get the video set up. Ted Verdone, the community organizer in our office as well.
I do got something else to add. So you guys do know that we just bought a tax on Amazon for $240 million, right? Yeah. Which is 4 times the amount that they approved and repealed in 2018. They should have kept that one, stupids. So now, what we legally can do? We legally can tell them where to put that first $240 million. By law, we can make an amendment to tell them where to put that money. So, how about you guys call their asses and tell them to put that first $240 million to the fucking black communities? Do some affordable housing for us. How about that? Amazon ain't never paid no taxes here. They can afford to build some affordable housing for black people. So y'all make sure y'all start new council members to do that too. Yeah. $240 million is a whole lot of money. You can do a whole lot with that for black communities. So you make sure you stay on your council members and tell their asses to spend Amazon's money on the black community too, since they gentrified one. I'm serious. Y'all make sure y'all call these council members and tell them to spend Amazon's $240 million a year tax on the black community since they gentrified one in the Central District. I'm serious.
All right. Well, I'm really excited that we were able to make that video work. I don't think that there's a better transition in reality from this community prep party to, on the one hand, celebrate the fact that we've won a tax on the biggest businesses for more than $200 million per year, but at the same time, to continue the fight to make sure that as much money as possible through the strength of our movement is transferred directly from big business to the communities in our neighborhood who most need it. And as we've seen over decades of gentrification and just systematic undercutting and neglecting of our neighborhoods, of Black and brown communities, that money, there's no better use for it than $50 million going to the Central District to build 1,000 permanently affordable social homes. We want to thank our movement when we talk to city council members for winning this tremendous victory. Thank Councilmember Shama Sawant's office, but making it clear that we expect city council to fund the Central District, fund housing. So let's go ahead and let's put up the splash screen for how people can go and transfer to the city council meeting. We're just 1 minute out. I want to once again thank people for once again waking up, signing up for public comment, joining us on this community watch party, and please, stay tuned for further struggles on potentially Amazon tax allocation of funds, and of course, for the people's budget movement, where we're going to take the strength of that movement that we saw in that video and fight for things like defunding the SPD by at least 50%, millions for tiny homes, millions for renter organizing and eviction defense, and so much more. So thank you so much, and we'll see you again in struggle. Solidarity.